Hey guys, good morning. Travis with Everglades here, and today we're going to take a look at a very popular size segment of compact track loaders. We've got the John Deere 317G, we've got the Kubota SVL 75-2, and we've got the John Deere 325. Stick around, we're going to see how these things stack up to each other. All right guys, let's talk about the three machines we have behind me, okay? All three of these machines fit in a very popular size category, partly because they're all below 75 engine horsepower. Anything above 75 horsepower requires diesel exhaust fluid. None of these machines require diesel exhaust fluid because they're all below 75 horsepower. Also, all three of these machines are less than 10,000 pounds. So whenever you're trying to move a machine around, you don't necessarily need a bigger truck, a bigger trailer to move your machine around. Now let's talk about some of the broad specs of these three things, right? The John Deere 317G has about 65 engine horsepower and it weighs 8,400 pounds. The Kubota SVL 75-2 has about 74 engine horsepower and it weighs 9,035 pounds. The John Deere 325 also has 74 horsepower and weighs about 9,500 pounds. So the horsepower between these two machines is the same, and the John Deere weighs a little bit more. So Kubota would love for you to price this John Deere 325G against this Kubota 75 because they're not in the same class. When Kubota designs a machine, one of the first things they have to accomplish is they build it based on price. They always try to have a lower price. And that's one of the big things that draws people to Kubota when they're first shopping for a tractor or a machine is the perception of the initial cheaper price. When you compare it to the right machine, that's not always the case. For the rest of this video, we don't necessarily need this 325 to compare to this Kubota 75-2. Now, even though on paper, the 317 has 10 less horsepower than this Kubota, but let's see how they actually perform. All right, so we talked about the specs of these two machines. So on paper, you would think that a machine with 10 more horsepower and a little bit more weight, about 600 pounds heavier, should be able to outperform the John Deere with 10 less horsepower and it weighs about 600 pounds less. So what we're gonna do is we got the same set of 48-inch pallet forks right here. We've got a big old concrete block and we've got two boxes. These two boxes contain tractor counterweights. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna snap onto these pallet forks on these two machines, wind both of them up, and we're gonna see which one is capable of lifting this. That's all she's got. Let's take a look at it from inside the cab. That's full throttle right there. We're tilted back. That's full throttle, tilted back. You can hear her, she's whining going into relief. That's all she's got. Go ahead and tilt back. Easy lift. We could probably go up higher if we wanted to, but just for stability, we're just gonna stay here. All right guys, so even though the Kubota has about 10 more horsepower and it still weighs more than the 317, the 317 at the end of the day just has far superior hydraulics. And as we've seen, that's gonna be the measure of whether or not you can get work done and be able to pick up loads. Now, another thing to note too, I talked about stability a little bit whenever I was lifting with the 317. You can add up to 2 sets of counterweights on the 317. You can't do that on a Kubota. And matter of fact, the next segment, we might as well title it, You Can't Get That on a Kubota. So let's go ahead and start with that. One of the things you can't get on a Kubota is counterweights. So on the 317, like I talked about, you can add up to 2 sets of counterweights. Also on a Kubota, the only way it comes is with these standard halogen lights. LED lights, you can't get that on a Kubota. Now this 317, we've got LED lights all the way around the machine. We've got side lights, we've got a light in the rear, we got LEDs in the front. Also, the back door back here is lockable. You can lock this back door. You can't get that on a Kubota. As far as maintenance access goes, the 317, all of your oil coolers here swing out, and you can easily clean these out as needed. On the Kubota, you can't get that on a Kubota. By the way, this door back here, we talked about it, you can't lock it. So anybody can come around and steal your battery, siphon out your fuel, do whatever they want to out here. In order to access behind here, it requires tools to tilt this radiator back. So in order to access your fuel filter in there, you can't get to it unless you tilt your coolers back, which requires tools. Also, in terms of general maintenance, a Kubota generally costs about twice to maintain what a John Deere will. All right, let's talk about whenever you got to refuel your machine, right? The fuel tank on the Kubota is located right here. And you'll find that this fuel cap is not tethered, so it's possible to drop this in the dirt and lose it and then contaminate your fuel system with dirt. On the John Deere 317, guess what? Our fuel tank is not only in an easier to access place, but they thought to tether the fuel cap so you can't drop it. Now, that's a little thing, but if you've ever dropped a fuel cap in the dirt, it's not much fun. And also, I want you to think about if you had to get like a 5-gallon can of diesel and fuel this machine. It would be very difficult because of where they put the fuel tank. Let's talk about some fit and finish on these machines. Now, you'll notice the John Deere and the Kubota both have Cardura sleeves around the hydraulic hoses, right? Here on the John Deere, we can see the same thing. So we have some protection around our hydraulic hoses, but on the boom lift cylinder, I guess they just ran out of the budget right here to put the sleeves on these cylinders, so these are not protected. Another thing is you'll find that this trough right here, a lot of debris will build up if you're ever running a rotary cutter or anything. You'll have leaves, sticks build up in there. Let's talk about some of the features inside the cab of these two machines. All right guys, so we're inside the cab of the John Deere 317G, right? So first of all, this is a keyless start system right here that comes standard on all of our skid steers, so you can type in a code in order to start the skid steer. You can't get that on a Kubota. The Kubotas only come with a keyed start where you turn a key to start the machine. And guess what? That's a universal key that anybody can have. So they're not necessarily the most secure things in the world. Now let's talk about the monitor over here. We have the ability to monitor several different functions on the machine. We also have the ability to read trouble codes as they come up. You can't get that on a Kubota. Now let's talk about some of the extra features. This switch right here is creep mode. This allows you to more or less put the machine in like a granny gear, so you can limit it down to say like 30%, right? That means you can have the throttle all the way up, this joystick all the way forward, and you're only going 30% of your top speed. That's useful if you're trying to run a rotary cutter or do any kind of precision thing where you just want to be able to get an exact speed and be able to rest your hand all the way forward. But guess what? You can't get that on a Kubota. Also, this 317 is equipped with ride control. That's this button right here. What this does, it's like a suspension system for the loader, and we've talked about this in other videos, but when you enable it, it allows the loader boom to have a little bit of give to it if you're transporting dirt across a job site. You can't get that on a Kubota. Now also, the seat that I'm sitting in is an air ride heated seat. You can't get an air ride heated seat on a Kubota. So this 317G is also equipped with performance joysticks. So what does that mean? That means with these two buttons right here, we can control the sensitivity of each joystick. See how there's 3 lights here, 1 light, 2 light? So this button right here changes the sensitivity of your left joystick. So the more lights that are on, the more sensitive this joystick will be and the faster it moves. This does the same thing, but for the loader joystick. So in other words, you can tailor the machine to respond exactly how you want it to as an operator. You can have it respond faster or slower depending on your preference as an operator. You can't get that on a Kubota. Okay guys, we're inside the cab of the Kubota 75 right now. Everybody likes to talk about this door like it's an end-all be-all thing, but a lot of times it kind of requires 2 hands to shut it. And a lot of times, let's go ahead and start it up. Even when shut, this door does not seal very well due to this track that it moves on. Additionally, as the machine starts to age, dust and debris build up in this track and it becomes even more difficult to shut. Now this machine only has about 67 hours on it. And this door is relatively easy to shut, but over time it becomes more and more difficult. Now let's talk about some of the features inside the cab. You'll notice there's only AC vents on one side of the cab. The John Deere has AC vents behind you. They have 4 AC vents, one here, there, here, and here. So they've got 4 AC vents. The Kubota only has it on this one side. So to quote the great warrior poet Nelly, it's getting hot in here. And during the summer, believe me, it will get hot in here in these Kubotas. Let's talk about the screen. The only thing you can really see is the hours, fuel, and coolant temperature. That's it. Additionally, when you sit in here at night, nothing in here is lit, as the kids say. So none of these switches are lit. So you have to be able to kind of find your way around here in the dark. A lot of times you got to pull out your cell phone and use the light in order to find these buttons in the dark. The 317, when you sit in it, a light immediately comes on when you sit in the seat. And also, all the buttons up here are backlit. So you can see exactly what you're doing even at night. Now additionally in the Kubota, talking about ergonomics, they also put the radio behind you over your shoulder, so it's not the most ergonomic thing to use while you're operating. So if you're operating and let's say, you know, Turnpike Troubadours comes on your playlist and you want to turn it up, you got to go back here and you got to stop what you're doing. You got to go up here and you got to be able to turn that up and then go back to working. Another thing is Kubota puts their windshield washer tank right here, which in my opinion, it looks like whenever they were engineering the machine, they just kind of ran out of space and they were like, well, I guess it will go here. And it's been here. Now again, you can't get keyless start on a Kubota. These Kubotas are started with this key. By the way, this is a universal key. So this key will start any Kubota 75 skid steer on the market. So not necessarily the most secure thing in the world. Now we talked about where Kubota put their AC vents only on one side of the cab right here, but look where they put the AC controls. They're right here. Now that's all well and good, but here's the problem. Whenever you're operating the machine, you have to have this lap bar down, and guess what? Now you can't necessarily access your AC controls because they're blocked by your lap bar. And then like I was talking about, to exit the cab, it definitely takes 2 hands because you have to be able to pop that open, and see in this case, and then you have to lock the door out to make sure it doesn't fall on you while you're getting out, and then you can exit the cab. Now in the John Deere 317, all of your maintenance points are located right here in about the same place. You've got your oil check, oil fill, here's your hydraulic tank. You got a nice big neck right here in order to pour oil in. It's not located over your track. Here's your engine air filters here. You've got your fuel water separator. I can easily access that here. Here's my fuel tank. Over here, I can easily access my fuel filter, my oil filter, and I can clean out my oil coolers very easily. Now, this is where Kubota decided to put your hydraulic tank right here. So if you want to add hydraulic oil, this is where you do it. So that means you got to take your hydraulic jug, lift it over the track, and be able to pour it in here without spilling it. Now, one of the most infuriating things Kubota did when they designed this machine is they made it pretty difficult to transport. Now, what do I mean by that? You need these things to be able to tie them down, chains, right? This has a 3/8 hook on there, but the way they designed this, look, you can't put the hook through there. So what you gotta do is you gotta feed it through there and then grab it from this side. It's even more difficult to do if you're wearing gloves. And yeah, it's a little thing, but it's really inconvenient for no reason. Now on the Deere, whenever you're chaining it down, you have these nice big pockets right there in the boom. There you go. It does not get much easier than that, fellas. All right, let's talk about the quick tatches on these two machines, right? So the John Deere uses an electric quick tatch system, which is protected by this steel plate right here. So all of your components are protected inside of here. The Kubota uses a hydraulic quick tatch system. So you can see here, they have an exposed hydraulic cylinder down here, and that's how you take your bucket on and off. Now this is susceptible to damage. You can get something, a piece of debris wedged in there, and you can break either the hydraulic cylinder or damage these lines. At that point, you'll be leaking hydraulic oil and you'll have a big oily mess to clean up, and your machine's losing hydraulic oil, so now you have to repair that before you can continue to run the machine. Now let's talk about the auxiliary couplers on these two machines. The John Deere's auxiliary couplers are mounted inside the boom right here, so they are protected. So if you're in the woods or anything like that and you've got limbs hitting it, you're protected. On the Kubota, they mounted them on top of the boom. Now, as you can see here, they are susceptible to damage. These are some pictures of what can happen when you're out in the woods, and does regularly happen to guys that run these things. So let's talk about another spec between the 317 and the 75. So the top speed of the 317 is 7 miles an hour. It's a 1-speed transmission, so you go from 0 to 7 all in that same gear, right? The Kubota, you want to guess what the top speed of it is? 7.1 miles an hour is what Kubota rated this for. Now, we don't really have an accurate way of testing that, but I can tell you one thing, is a 317 in that one gear, you get from 0 to 7, so you get that full range of power in the 317. And the Kubota, first gear feels really slow, and if you go into 2-speed, you lose a lot of your track power and it's difficult to turn. So that's something else to keep in mind. It's hard to illustrate that in a video, but if you get in one of these things and you drive it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. One more thing about buying a John Deere from Everglades Equipment is after you buy the machine, we've got your back. Now, I represent a lot of good people at Everglades Equipment, and we'll pick up the phone whenever you call, and we got your back. And I'll tell you what, you can't get that on the Kubota. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. What'd you think? Let us know down there in the comments, and we look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you on the next one.